Welcome to the Yahowah blog. We're going to continue our study of what Yashaya, who is more commonly known as Isaiah. Yashaya is a compound of Yasha, which is the Hebrew word for salvation, to save, to deliver, to liberate someone from harm. And Yahweh is God's one and only name. So it means that Yahweh delivers, Yahweh saves. And he, in what is now the 14th chapter, now understand that Yahweh's, Yashaya's inspired prophetic insights from Yahweh were not broken into chapters. They were not broken into verses. It was all one communication from God. Now broken out over a number of years and on a variety of different subjects, with the 11th chapter, which is called the 11th chapter now, devoted to the Towrah, which was the second book really written about the Towrah. The first was written by Dode, and the 14th Mizmor, the 11th chapter of Yashaya, then being the second. It is defining of who we are and what we're trying to achieve. And at this time, I'm on the Yahowah blog, and as a result of all of these books you see behind me. When we move to the 14th chapter of Yashaya, the subject is on the adversary. It is on Hallel ben Shakar. He is Satan, and God has a lot to say about him. And it is interesting to note that the more we know about the role Satan plays, particularly in religion, what his ambition is to achieve, the better really we're able to understand our world and what we're up against, because our battle is against those who are religious and corrupting the word of God, those who are political and trying to mislead people into harm's way, those who are conspiratorial and are prone to blame Jews for all manner of things, and all those who would corrupt the testimony of Yahweh. These are things the adversary advances. Now, this adversary isn't omnipotent, not omniscient, not omnipresent. It doesn't know all things, certainly can't be in all places at one time. At one time, however, the adversary was a cherub, which means one of the leading and most protective of the Malach. But this one was programmed to provide choice by advocating that which is not Yahweh. And he has performed his role really quite well. But as a result of what he did in the garden and the way that he went about misleading Yahweh by misquoting Yahweh's testimony, just making one slight edit to what God said to provide the antithesis in terms of meaning. It was a lesson that we would see play out in the New Testament. It's the exact ploy that Paul played when writing the first 14 books of the New Testament and creating the myth of Jesus. It's all just twisting what Yahweh said enough so that it conveys the opposite meaning, but not so much that you would say, what in the hell? That is not what God said. Now, I have come to that conclusion, and so should you, but it isn't something that those who were unfamiliar with the Torah and prophets would have deduced, at least at the infancy of Christianity, while there was still choice to accept or reject the religion. And so we get to know who this character is. He was diminished after the garden. He is relegated to a serpent. He is still a fairly beguiling creature at that. He is the Allah of Islam. He is the Jesus and the Lord God of Christianity. He is the Hashem of Judaism. They have all replaced Yahweh with the alternative. And so understanding how Satan ended up being worshipped as the god of religion and why that happened is important for our understanding, because we have to clear the religious muck out of the way before people are in a position to appreciate that Yahweh is God's one and only name, that Yahweh is anti-religious, that God is apolitical. He is not that God, God bless America. No, no, no. This idea that we ought to be praying for our president. Hell no. God does not want to hear you pray. God has no interest in your prayers. He is actually disgusted by them. He is just absolutely appalled at anyone who is religious, particularly Christians, those who practice Judaism, the worst being the Haredim. And of course, he's disgusted by Muslims. God does not have any interest in anyone who is overtly political or religious. The first condition of the covenant is to walk away from those things. So in the previous statement that we considered in Yashaya, Isaiah 14, we were told that Sheol, which is actually the black hole of hell, was anticipating the adversary's arrival. That Satan, the Lord God of religion, is headed to Sheol, and he's going to arrive at a date certain. This is going to be the 24th of September on Towrah in 2033, which is year 6,000 Yah. It's kind of funny in a way because rabbis have completely hoodwinked Jews into believing that the next mikra to celebrate is Rosh Hashanah as opposed to Towrah. And Rosh Hashanah is the head of the year in the Babylonian religion. And they have concocted this whole religious bit about you blow the shofar on this day, not because Yahweh told you to blow the shofar on Towrah to awaken people to the fact that most people are going the wrong way and that there is one and only way to God, which is the message of Towrah. They blow it to confuse the devil, because the devil is supposed to, on this day, make the accounting of which souls go to hell. And if you confuse him on this day by blowing the shofar, well, then you're going to get another year where you can be as religious as you want and no one's going to be bothered. So it is the day to confuse the Satan by rabbinical mythology. And I think that's hilarious, and it's in its own right. But nonetheless, Satan has a confirmed reservation. This is the day that he's going to arrive. And it's also important to know that Satan has a type. We are told explicitly that there's going to be an extraordinary individual that is going to be demonic, that he is going to mirror Satan's attitudes and aptitudes. In other words, he is going to be duplicitous, deceitful, anti-Semitic. He will be braggadocious. He will be a psychopath. He will be deadly. He is astonishingly perverted sexually. Satan has a type, power hungry. In other words, he's going to be exactly like Muhammad and exactly like Paul, the founders of Islam and Christianity. That is Satan's type. And of course, those two men admitted they were demon possessed. Today, the manifestation of Hasatan is Donald Trump. And if you read what is said about this individual and Daniel, and compare it to what's said about this individual and Ezekiel, and compare it to what is said about this individual here in Yashaya 14, there's just no question about it. The only person who's ever met all of these qualifications, at least at this time, which is as we approach Shavuot, this is when this individual has to become known, because he is responsible for advocating the destruction of Israel by compelling Israel to give up its heart to form a terrorist state. And that is the two-state solution that is now being advanced, and why, with all of the pressure that's being put on the United States by those who have already bribed Donald Trump, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, Donald Trump is going to betray Israel. And that is what the prophets foretold. And it says that this person who betrays Israel at this time is, in fact, the one that Christians would call the Antichrist. That is what we're dealing with. And also in that previous statement, when it says that hell is, Sheol is anticipating your arrival, it also says that the adversary is going to enter Sheol at this time with every world leader, politically, religiously, the influencers, you name it, everybody who can be accused of deceiving people is going to be there. Today there is this great celebration, turning Charlie Kirk, who had a gig where he promoted Christianity and MAGA politics for money. And he had his little stick where he went out and did these things, and he amassed millions of followers and millions of dollars doing them. And he's the very type that is going to accompany the adversary into Sheol. Now, I know that isn't what most people want to hear. And somebody might say, oh, how could you say that when his wife and children are suffering? His wife is part of the problem. His wife is contributing to this problem. They're trying to deify this man. And what he had to say was absolutely wrong. Anyone who believes him, and now that his life is being celebrated by the MAGAites and the Christians, this is a disaster, because it's going to lure more and more people to their demise by believing that he spoke truthfully when he in fact did not. So that is who hell is for. That is what God has said. Those who are perceived as the leaders, religiously in particular, are going to accompany Hasatan. Now, giving their preference for altering reality, perhaps they will redecorate hell to their liking, but I don't think that any of them, particularly those with fancy houses and real estate developments, are going to like the arrangement, even in the presidential wing of Sheol. It always bothered me that someone like Charlie Kirk can show all of this. So I'm a loving and devoted father and to my little daughter. And then you're largely responsible for a rapist and pedophile becoming president of the United States and then running cover for him. There's something exceedingly perverse about this. And I know that today there's a witch hunt out now for anyone that would speak out against Charlie, as if you say something bad about him, you're a horrible person. Well, I mean, the fact is that anybody that celebrates the man's death is disgusting. And you've noticed I've never done that, and I will not do that. I'm a man who is staunchly nonviolent. I believe in using words. And if you can't expose and condemn a person or an idea based upon the words that you convey to expose them, then you ought not engage. And so those who celebrate his death, which many liberals were doing, that's revolting. But by the same token, because this man was so controversial and so shrill in his promotion of so many things that many of us, I particularly, disagree with, and his promotion of Christianity, his promotion of Donald Trump and MAGA politics, and he was turning anti-Semitic with every new interview. I am going to say I do not celebrate his life. I don't celebrate his death, but by the same token, I do not celebrate his life. Anyway, the inmates and going into Sheol were overheard chatting with one another regarding this turn of events, and this is what we hear. And this is likely overhearing them approaching Sheol and saying, reporting in our past what they're going to say. And it's all of them will respond and say to you, they're saying now this to Hallel ben Shakar, the adversary himself, the Jesus Christ of Christianity, the Allah of Islam, the Hashem of Judaism. Have you also become weak and afflicted, riddled with anxiety, similar to us, becoming like the proverb? And it's got to be shocking. Can you imagine being a Christian and thinking, onward Christian soldiers and Jesus is God and that he's going to save you, to find that Jesus is actually Satan and he's there to condemn you. Or to be a Muslim and believing that if you kill for Allah, you end up with a bevy of virgins in paradise, and there you are with Allah in hell, and Allah turns out to be, in fact, Satan. Or you're a Jew and you're practicing Judaism, and you've got all manner of justifications for ignoring Yahweh, and you finally end up and find out that you've talked yourself right into hell. Now, hell isn't for everybody. And I want to be really careful about this too. If you are misled, your soul simply dissipates into nothingness upon your demise. No reward, no punishment, no nothing. Your life's simply over. You squandered it, and your soul is evaporated. And that's the majority of people, the vast majority of people. But if you do the kinds of things that Paul did, that Muhammad did, that every pope has done, that Donald Trump is doing, that Charlie Kirk did, then you have made a reservation for yourself in the place of separation, because misleading is a crime of commission, and God views crimes of commission in religion very differently than crimes of omission. Omission ends up in death if it isn't resolved. If it is resolved, it can be wiped clean and turned into life, but not commission. So be careful who you promote. So anyway, welcome to hell. But what makes this especially unnerving is that the inmates are questioning Satan in a place appropriately named Sheol. Question him. And of course, guess who else they're going to meet there? Muhammad's going to be there. Paul's going to be there. Hadrian, Akiba, Maimonides, Baal Shem Tov. Oh boy, it's going to be an amazing place. Hitler will be there. Stalin will be there. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of folks right there. They'll find even Billy Graham will be there. It's just amazing who is going to be there for having misled as opposed to being misled. Very big difference. It says your arrogance, your unwarranted status, your desire to rise above others, your lack of morality, your propensity to blow smoke, and your agitating self-glorification, gaon, ata, your pride, conceit, and immoral narcissism have brought you down to Sheol and to Shaul. I shared a clip from, I think his name is Patterson, the psychiatrist who has become so popular because now he does a quasi-religious political broadcast. He is also one who has figured out how to monetize his shtick on social media. And he put out a piece that says, do not be nice to narcissists. And I reposted it with a note. And I said that being nice to narcissists is a problem because that's how you feed them. You become an enabler for a narcissist when you're kind to them. That is a terrible thing to do with a narcissist. You make a bad situation worse. My father, for example, was a narcissist, and you have to learn that you cannot appease them. Being kind to them does not work. Arguing with them and engaging with them doesn't work either. The only thing that does work is to what's called gray rock them, because they're emotional vampires. You have to show them nothing. You walk away, you show them nothing. And that is the way that you shut down a narcissist. In the case of this, though, what I said is that, well, narcissism is bad. Being a psychopath is far worse. About 5% of Americans or Europeans would be narcissists. About 1% would be psychopaths. We had a clinically diagnosed psychopath in our midst at one time. And I did not know that until my wife told me that she had a whole conversation with this person who's Dee Powers. and that she admitted that she had been clinically diagnosed as a psychopath. Had I known that, I would have had a very different strategy. But not knowing that, my natural sense is to support people that have gone through tough times. And she just described how everyone, her parents, her in-laws, her children, her husband, everybody she said that she was in contact with her whole life had been abusive to her. And that I was the only person who listened to her, who supported her. And even when she feigned, and I didn't know she was doing that at the time, but she feigned disagreements that made it sound like she was operating appropriately. I didn't know that she actually set these people up and lied about them, but she claimed that people were attacking her and unfairly demeaning her and how it was bringing her to tears. And I intervened on her behalf. No one had ever done more for her. Leah and I provided $20,000 for her because she needed monies, according to her, so she could set herself up and her children so she wouldn't be abused by her husband. Now that I know her, my guess is that her husband was never abusing her, and it was simply one of many lies as she tried to get sympathy and rob people with a false sense of victimization. Anyway, these psychopaths spend most of their energy trying to encourage people to be kind to them, to see them as a victim and to support them. And when you do, you don't make the situation better, you make it vastly worse, because they now have a sense of control over you, and they use that. And they expect that they will be able to play you no matter what they do. And because they themselves have no ethics, they will always turn. And this woman turned. And when she turned, she evidently thought that she had control over me and that she could besmirch my wife to the point that I would somehow distance myself from Leah and accept her. Didn't turn out that way. No, I'm actually a very, very loyal person until you've given me ample reason that you don't deserve it. And so I originally just backed away and said, I'm not going to say anything. And then everybody else that went away with her, I actually complimented, thanked them for their work in the past. And then I found out there was no way to continue that. And Yahweh was very clear. And he says, I want you to know this is my strategy for how you deal with these kind of people going forward. And this is how I want you to treat them. And he took us directly to Numbers 12. But what I found out is that to be a psychopath, truth has no validity. There's no morality. Their status is always unwarranted. They're always arrogant. They always have a desire to rise above others, which they don't do through achievement. They do by putting others down. They have a propensity to blow smoke. They're self-agitating. They're self-glorifying. And they are a moral narcissist. They are gaon. And in this particular situation, what I found is that they will go so far as to invert everything that they had previously held to be true. Because now that the person who they had so admired and had affirmed everything that they themselves and I had discovered, now they had to invert all of it. I mean, their entire world, everything has to be inverted and turned upside down so that they can justify being contrary to what they once supported. It's a very chaotic world. And that once you get into it, it's like conspiracy. Nothing resonates anymore. Nothing makes sense. You kind of go together, you get into an echo chamber, and that's where they are. And it's a very dangerous thing. And so the bottom line is never be nice to a psychopath. Now, I'm going to broaden this out beyond our group to the United States. The United States is right now led by a psychopath. And those in MAGA and those who are Christians who are supporting this sexual deviant, this confabulator, this demon-possessed man that is so destructive, they are egging their own demise. They are co-conspirators now. And as a psychopath and narcissist, Trump feeds off of this. He can't go a day without adulation. So be really careful. And I would say this, the same thing is true when evaluating someone like Charlie Kirk's life that is now, going to be a full stadium for his funeral and moments of silence and all of this sort of thing. And all these people paying tribute. Elon Musk is going to put 77 on the sides of all of his rockets. Not that I'll ever watch another launch of SpaceX ever. And made it an us against them civil war. You need to be very careful who you're aligning with. Because the consequences can be exceedingly grievous. And at the boisterous and disquieting sound of your disgraceful and foolish implements, maggots will spread out on a bed, and a crimson grub will become your covers. Wow. Yashaya, Isaiah 14:11. They are boisterous, aren't they? You listen to the societal influencers, you listen to the most popular sites on X and the like. They are really, really boisterous. And it's disquieting what they have to say. It's disgraceful. What they say is exceedingly foolish. And yet, they're popular. They proliferate like maggots. And they have made their own bed. As for that crimson grub, that Towrahless, that's a very special critter. It is the term that Dode used to describe his appearance after the Romans had beaten him to the point where they ripped off his flesh. Dode saw this and wrote about it 1,000 years before he endured it. But he described what the Roman whips with the metal spikes on the ends of it would do to a man before they're crucified, and that's what they did to him. And he used Towrahless to describe it. When describing what would happen with the sacrifice of the Adam of Torah, we find the same thing. That there is a Towrahless tossed into the mix to make the connection between what Dode endured when fulfilling Pesach and what the Adam of Torah will endure when fulfilling Teruah. It's a red grub. And it's interesting that the color red is there because, of course, the man from Edom that saves many is attired in red. Adam of Torah means bloody red and productive bull. It describes the color of the wine that we drink to memorialize what Dode has achieved. It describes the color of blood, which is the source of life and which is shed to give life. We identify by bringing the sacrifices of the Passover lamb and the Teruah bull together through this word. So Satan has a type. His spirit is most comfortable and effective in like-minded tyrants. In this regard, Paul, Mohammed, and Trump are exceedingly arrogant. And yes, as will be the case with Satan, the unwarranted status of these self-aggrandizing and immoral men will be their undoing. What goes up will come down. It is the gravity of this situation. The reason that Sheol exists is that Ruach, like Hasatan, are immortal. And since they never die, they must be eternally separated. Therefore, Sheol is akin to a black hole, a lightless realm that exists only in the dimension of time that light itself, light energy, like a Ruach, cannot escape. Now, they are a special kind of Ruach. They're really Malak. So these Malak, like Hasatan, have to be sent to Sheol because they cannot be killed. And God's view is that if you associate with one of them in such a way that you lead people astray, either to be antagonistic towards God's people by being anti-Semitic, or being religious or overtly political, this is your due. That's why this praising a man who was overtly political and religious and canonizing him so that others want to follow in his footsteps is so dangerous, because it makes that change between being misled and misleading. And while one ends with the termination of one's soul, the other ends with that soul living on forever in a place of separation. This is a very serious thing that we ought to take seriously, which is why I risk my standing and reputation to expose and condemn what I know to be a very, very poor life choice. Now, the reason that Sheol exists is, again, that we have to have a consequence for misleading. If there was not a consequence for doing egregious things in the name of religion and politics, like the Inquisition, like the Holocaust, these were egregious acts justified in the name of religion and politics. And the events of 10/7, again, an egregious act in the name of religion. So there has to be a consequence for these things, and that's what Sheol is designed. And while this is an apt depiction of religious and political leaders, worms and maggots are metaphors for decomposition. Therefore, Yahweh's way of showing his regard, or disregard, I should say. It's the disregard is a form of regard, is it not? And disrespect. The elegantly attired and life will look a lot less attractive in the hereafter. The fancy multi-million-dollar home will not look quite so lavish. Now, there is an interesting scarlet creature placed among the maggots, and that is because the Tolah crimson grub is used systematically to associate those Pesach sacrifice with Yada's fulfillment of Towrah, as I explained a moment ago. In particular, as the Adama Parah, Yada is the bloody red bull, who is productive in this way. Similarly, the man from Edom is depicted dressed in red. It is the color of blood and is symbolic of life and death. So we've arrived at the place we had anticipated in our quest to better understand Hasatan, the scoundrel that he will possess, this being now Donald Trump. Out of heaven, through Babylon, and now among Gentiles, we are introduced to Hallel ben Shakar, more commonly known as the Adversary, Satan. He has been cast out of the spiritual realm for having estranged souls and spirits from God by lording over them such that they bow down to him in submission to him. Every Islamic prostration is an ode to Satan. That's why they put their noses in the dirt and their butts in the air. And every nuance we can glean from this depiction, well, it adds to our understanding. And so we capitalize on the benefits of amplification here and henceforth. It begins Ek, oh how. This is the degree, and explains how you have fallen and you have been cast down, Nephal. Nephal is an interesting word because, are you familiar with the Nephilim? The Nephilim were the alleged giants in the time of Noah. They weren't giants at all. They were humans who had fallen. They were humans who were engaged in prostration prayer. They were people who were going to be diminished in their status. They depict those who are engaged in religious worship and bowing down. So it is Nephal that is misrendered giants. It means exactly the opposite, to be lowly, to be diminished, to have gone from a higher position to a lower one, and to prostrate oneself. And so this is a very loaded term that when it appears, we always ought to be cognizant of this. When I asked Rich earlier today what was the spy's version of the promised land when they were allowed into it, and he said they lied. Well, this was the thing they lied about. He said said there be giants in the land. They said there were Nephilim in the land. Well, the Nephilim were destroyed by Yahweh at the time of the flood. So they could not have been in the land, and they were not in the land. And Yahweh was particularly angered that his people lied to him. So they have fallen and been cast down. Reading from the beginning, oh, how you have fallen and been cast down, Nephal, from the spiritual realm of the heavens, Hallel ben Shakar, flashy, shining, and boastful spawn of the eastern dawn. Hallel ben Shakar, brightly shining son of artifice, flashy, swarthy, and boastful beginning of a new age where the truth is concealed, an early light-bearing child of the east with overtly zealous desires, conjuring and shimmering son of blackness, using trickery and illusions, ostentatious show of light, predisposed to mislead and make others appear foolish, as a descendant of a black and gloomy place in the east, predicated upon the rising sun, the crescent moon, and the morning star, more commonly known as Lucifer, from halal, to shine, to be flashy, to boast, to be arrogant, to seek praise, to be slanderous, insane, foolish, and furious, Ben, son, child, and offspring, and Shakar, early on to seek to cloud over and obscure in darkness during the dawn of a new age, relying on artifice and illusions. That's probably not a name that you want to ascribe to. That's not a good name. It should not, by the way, have been replaced by Lucifer either, because it is Hallel ben Shakar, flashy, shining, boastful spawn of an eastern dawn. You have been, by the way, what is east of Israel?
Babylon.
Babylon is east of Israel, and that is what God is saying here. Where did Islam rise?
Out of Babylon.
Where was the Babylonian Talmud created for Judaism?
Babylon?
Babylon, that's right, in Babylon. And the basis of Christianity, with the Trinity, with the Mother of God, the Queen of Heaven, with the cross, with the dying and resurrecting God, with the Easter celebration, where did all that come from?
That's the old Babylonian religion.
That is the old Babylonian religion, the good old religion of Babylon. Where did the idea of commingling religion and politics first emerge?
Came from Babylon.
Came from Babylon. There you have it. So the whole thing that Charlie Kirk did all the time on his integration of religion and politics, that was from
Babylon. Nothing's changed. We got fresh lipstick on the same damn pig.
And Babylon is from what Hebrew word? What is the Hebrew word for Babylon?
Babel.
That is correct. And the three letters for Babel would be the basis of Bible, would it not be?
Yep.
Does God ever call his testimony the Bible?
Never.
And Babel, what does Babel mean in Hebrew? Do you know?
Confusion.
Yes. To confound and confuse by intermixing truth and lies. That is what, when you hold in your Bible and say the whole of Bible, Bible is to confuse and confound by commingling and intermixing, and to do so from the perspective of Babylon. It is a compound of two words, ba and bel. Ba means with, and bel is the Lord. The Lord happens to be Satan. This is a really bad term. You will never, ever hear me associate Yahweh's testimony with the Bible. Ever. And nor should you or anyone. Anyway, that is what is east. So his name, the rising sun in the east, east of Jerusalem, east of Israel, is Babylon. And so he is associated with Babylon, the birthplace of institutionalized religion. What place did Yahweh have Abraham and Sarah walk away from before he engaged with them in the covenant?
From the land of Ur, Babylon.
Babylon. the city-state of Ur, and the land of the Chaldeans. Chaldea means Babylon. So indeed, walking away from Babylon is the first condition for participation in the covenant. Getting the message? By the way, there is no Christianity without Babylon. There is no Islam without Babylon. There is no Judaism without Babylon. You have been disassociated and cut off, cut down and cast away. Yada. For having estranged many, you have been felled, you have fallen, you have been severed from what has been done, and you will be silenced. You know, it's interesting, the choder that Yahweh has used to confront the adversary, to be the adversary's adversary. We are told that this choder emerges as a sucker out of the fallen rootstock and stump that had been Israel. Who cut that stump down? Who cast it away? Same fellow, Hallel ben Shakar,
Yep.
Satan. So you have been disassociated and cast off and cast away for having estranged many. You have been felled and have fallen, severed for what has been done, and you will be silenced and subjected to enormous pressures and sent down to the earth for having weakened and then overwhelmed, conquering through religious and political prostrations, thereby lording over people, and specifically Gentiles, their nations, and their institutions. Yashaya 14:12. All right, so in this, we begin with pay attention. What follows, explains a great deal. So pay attention to what God is saying next through his prophet Yashaya. He's saying of Hallel ben Shakar, which is the actual name of the adversary, Satan, that he was cast down. So that he was a spiritual being, but now he is in the material world. That means he cannot be omnipresent. It means he cannot be omniscient. It means that he now actually has to work typically with one person at a time. He may have a group of fallen angels called demons that work with him, but he is most typically picking one person to possess. And the present time, it is Donald Trump. The most influential person he ever possessed would have been Paul. And the second most influential would have been Muhammad. And so he came from the spiritual realm. His name was Hallel Shakar, that he has been disassociated. So he was once part of the host, this Sabah of Yahweh's Malak. He is no more. He was set apart from them, estranged. And he was sent to the earth, which means this is where we experience him. That means that when somebody says they're being spiritual, guess who's spirit? When somebody says they're worshiping the Lord, guess who the Lord is? He is the maker and the shaker of empires and of the most celebrated people of all time. He is the influence behind them. He is here on earth. You know, when we saw with the Devil's Advocate, the movie with Al Pacino, that was really so well done, so clever. You know, he says, you know, God's an absentee landlord. I'm down here. I'm with man. I'm a fan of man. Well, actually, he's not a fan of man. He hates man. That's why his religions are typically genocidal. But the fact of the matter is, he is down here. He's cultivating humankind to destroy humankind here on the earth. And he has weakened and then overwhelmed, conquered through religious and political prostrations. This notion of bowing down is what lords want. It's what Hasatan, Satan, wants. God does not want you to bow down to him. So if you're bowing down, if you're being religious, then the object of your bowing, your prostrations, and your prayers, the Lord of those things is Satan. That is what this says.
He's the ultimate social influencer.
Yes. Yes. Satan is the ultimate social influencer. And all of those who pray and who bow down and who worship a Lord have been influenced by Satan. Now, either you don't know it and have just been stupid and you've been played for a fool, and therefore you have been misled, and the consequence of that is that at the end of your life, your soul will be exterminated. There'll be nothing more. Or you are deliberately misleading. And if that's the case, then you'll get to spend your eternity with Hasatan. So be really careful. This is serious stuff. So again, this is very clear. Satan has been cut off and cast down to the earth. And here he has weakened humanity and conquered mankind by religious and political prostrations and by lording over them. The Lord is Satan. Those who bow down to Satan, not to God. Those who pray to Satan, not God. Those who have a Lord are worshiping Satan, not God. It says, over people and specifically Gentiles, their nations and institutions, the Goyim, foreign and estranged ethnic, religious, and geopolitical groups, typically apart from Israel, pagan peoples acting as if they were animals. In the plural here is how it's written, Goyim. There are times when Goy singular can speak of the Nakar, this observant foreigner, but when it's in the plural, it's almost never good. It's almost always estranged from Israel. But you might say, wait a minute, you mentioned Judaism as amongst those who are bowing down and doing their little bobbing prostrations and their prayers to Satan. God will actually use Goyim on occasion in description of Israel. When Israel becomes as Goy as Goyim, when they choose to have political parties and political movements, and they choose to be religious, when they start acting like Goy by being religious and by being political, God will refer to Jews as Goyim. So it does apply to both. The term, by the way, is from Ga'ah, G-A-W-A-H, as opposed to Goy, Goyah, if you will. It means arrogantly exalting humans, especially their flesh and bones, while pridefully lifting up those who have turned their backs and were walking away, the corpse and carcasses of the dead. Zombie apocalypse here in Goyim. This is from Yashaya, Isaiah 14:12. Powerful statement, is it not? So Yahweh was revealing the circumstances behind why Hasatan, the adversary, was cast out of heaven and down to earth. In the initial verb, we discover that the devil was not only Nafal, cast out and banished, he was Nafal, diminished and put in an inferior position. His association with God was over. There's a lot of people now that want to present Hasatan, Satan, in hell. That is not where he is. That is where he's going. But that's not where he is. Where did it say that he was going?
To the earth.
To the earth. So if you want to know where he is, he's on the earth. If you want to know where he's going into Sheol, but he's not there now. There are two additional insights worth considering regarding Nafal. First, those God drowned during the flood were Nephilim, which is the plural Nafal. It suggests that Satan played a role in corrupting them, thereby causing their demise. And second, there are overt religious connotations with Nafal because it speaks of believers bowing down and prostrating themselves. Religion has always been Satan's most formidable ploy. Mankind's exposure, therefore, to the arrogant son of darkness would intensify as a result of Yahweh dispatching him to earth. This, combined with the Israelites telling God to shut up and go away, left the planet particularly vulnerable. And you say, why would God do that? Why would God do what the children of Israel want, shut up and go away, and then dispatch Satan to earth unless he wanted everybody to be religious? No, what he wanted was a filtering mechanism. He had given plenty of information to know him. Rich all the time when we were just having a meal or something, he would say, the most amazing part of all of this is everything that you have discovered and shared has been there all the time Anyone could have read it. Anyone could have come to these conclusions, but we're just all blind to them. And so it's just amazing that God's message has always been there. We've just neglected it. And humankind has neglected it. And that's the truth. God gave more than enough information to know that he exists and to know what testimony he inspired and what he didn't. And so at any time, anyone could have chosen to get to know him. There's been nothing that has been as prolific and as beautifully maintained as the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. It's always been available. And so at any time, you could figure it out. And you say, well, what about the poor guy in South Africa? Well, I'm telling you, the person that brings up that argument doesn't care about the poor guy in South Africa. If he did, he would be part of the covenant and go down to try to share the covenant with the poor guy in South Africa. But they never do that. They're just looking for an excuse for themselves and say, well, they don't have access to that information. Well, today, by the way, that's mostly untrue. Now, there are more smartphones, more than 8 billion smartphones than there are people. And virtually every smartphone is connected to the internet. And this information is available to all. People are without excuse. But nonetheless, you want to run that as your ploy. What about the guy before the internet that was in the Congo? What is the consequence of not coming to know Yahweh and responding to what he is offering and expecting in return?
Simply cease to exist.
You simply cease to exist. So the person in the Congo has not been harmed in any way. He was given a life, was given free will, given the opportunity to make whatever choices they wanted to make, live their life. When their life is over, it's over. God didn't punish them. God gave them a gift of life. God gave them a world to live in. He didn't shortchange them in any way. They lived their life, and when their life is over, it's over. Just like an animal living their life, and when at the end of their life, that's it. The soul dissipates to nothingness. There is no penalty in this, and that's the answer to that. To earn the right to exist forever with Yahweh takes considerable work. You have to invest the time and the energy to come to know who Yahweh is, come to respect him, appreciate what he's offering, understand what he's expecting in return, and know how to capitalize on it. It takes a lot because God is expecting a lot of those who are part of his family. We did a previous show in our Rainbow Studio earlier today where the whole thing was, are you in? This is the mission. What are you going to do to contribute? God told Adam, when there's only one person that he could relate to, Adam, he said, we're here to work in the garden. Forevermore, we're going to be working. What did God say to Pharaoh when the children of Israel were freed? What were they going to do? They were going to go to work with him. God values work. He knows it builds character. He knows that it creates value. And so this is something that is essential. You've got to be willing to engage and make a difference. And in this case, you don't need to worry about the lives of those who have been mistaken, who have been misled, who've never known the truth. They simply cease to exist. You want to criticize and condemn those who mislead so that more are not misled. And then you want to share the truth that Yahweh was offering so that more people have the opportunity to be part of his family. Well, as I've shared a moment ago, Hallel, which is written in this case with the yod, it's written elsewhere without it. Halal and Hallel are the same word. It's based on the verb halal, and halal is to be flashy, to be boastful, things that God is not. It is to foolishly seek praise, something that God disdains. In addition, halal is to be slanderous, insane, and foolish. These traits are unbecoming to anyone who is seeking to be with God. But what makes halal the adversary. Now, the reason that Yahweh never asks us to praise or to worship him is because doing so would degrade God. And it would foreclose on the familial relationship he is so desirous of establishing. One does not worship a father. Ever. One does not bow down to a father. One does not lavishly praise a father. This is disgusting kinds of stuff. And if you put yourself in God's position and you think for a moment that he created an inferior being to worship him, that makes God disgusting. One of the things that is the most repulsive to me is Christian worship, or Jewish worship, or Islamic worship. It's revolting because it is so insulting to God. A superior being who would create an inferior life form to worship him would make him a narcissist and as pathetic as Satan. Bowing down to loved ones destroys reciprocity and is caustic to volition, both of which are needed to develop a mutually enjoyable and beneficial relationship. The desire to be worshipped, as reflected in Hallel's name, is one of the many things which differentiate Satan from Yahweh. This is the disparity between religion and relationship. It is also manifest in the distinction between a Lord and a Father. You can't be both. You can't have both. It's relationship or religion. It's a Lord or a Father. Ben Shakar, the spawn of the Dark Dawn, is a very unappealing moniker, which is why Satan's preference is to be known as the Lord. He doesn't want to be known as Hallel ben Shakar, and he most certainly doesn't want to be known as the Adversary. In this name, we find the devil using artifice and delusions to conjure false impressions. During this Shakar, dawning of a new age, he has sought to conceal his jealous desires to be perceived as heavenly, when his ultimate destination is the darkness of a black hole. Shakar has risen out of the east, descending from Babylon or ascending, I should say, from Babylon to plague the civilized world through Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All the while, he has been worshipped under the guise of the rising sun, the crescent moon, and a morning star, symbols which permeate the Babylonian, Persian, Greek, and Roman religions, astrology, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. That's why I'm so opposed to the six-pointed star in Judaism, why I'm opposed to the cross in Christianity. I don't really care about the moon in Islam, other than it is the corruption of a very important symbol relative to the sun, the greater and lesser luminaries in Yahweh's teachings. Hallel ben Shakar is a hellish name, and by analyzing it, we know that the devil prefers to be called the Lord. He wants to be known as God. He is Hashem. He is Jesus Christ, and he is Allah. As Hasatan, the adversary, he isn't going to fool anybody into worshiping him as God, which is why he goes to great lengths to disparage the satanic title that he despises. That should be a mic drop. In Christianity and Judaism, and to some extent Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Satan is constantly disparaged by the Lord. Now, the Lord is actually Satan, but he is disparaging the satanic title that he despises, because unless he can disassociate from the satanic title, he can't be worshipped as the Lord. Once you understand that, then religion will make sense to you. Religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam worship Satan as God, as Satan strives to abolish his adversary designation so that he can be embraced as the Lord. The Nifal, the Nifal perfect, that's a stem and a conjugation, when applied to Gada, reveals that as a result of having severed others from God, over a finite period of time, Satan will be cast down and then be disassociated in the place of eternal estrangement. And that will be complete. To Yahweh, so Yahweh has differentiated his habitats. God lives in Shamaim, the spiritual realm of the heavens. He has to, because he is a seven-dimensional being, and Shamaim is a seven-dimensional realm. Hallel ben Shakar's current abode is Eretz, the earth. Although, as we have seen, there is a timeshare arranged for him in Sheol, and he's going to have very, very lavish accompaniment amongst the most religious and political, and particularly those who are religious and political. Be careful who you adore, who you praise. According to Yahweh, Satan is guilty of having chalash al goyim, weakened and then overwhelmed Gentiles, conquering them through religious and political prostrations, thereby lording over the nations. To shalash is to control others, which is the purpose of religion, depriving them of the capacity to live. Nothing has been deadlier. The shalash are disabled and debilitated as a result of bowing down in submission. What did Christianity do to Jews? It dehumanized them. That's what the New Testament does to God's people. What does the Quran do to God's people? It dehumanizes them. It demonizes them. So this is akin to Donald Trump climbing to power by demeaning and denouncing friends and foes. No one is immune from his angry diatribes. He is the Hannibal Lecter of politics. The devil's playground has been mostly among the Goyim, those foreign to Israel and estranged ethnically, religiously, and geopolitically from Yehudim. As pagan people, they have acted as if they were animals, many as zombies, as the walking dead, as Yahweh forewarned when he asked his people to avoid emulating them. However, keep in mind that when Jews said to Shamuel that we want to be like the Goyim and have a king to rule over us, and they chose Shaul, then God began to view them as Goyim. And he has viewed Israelites as Goyim ever since. And let's not lose track of the fact that it was rabbis who created Christianity and Islam. Now recognize that Goy is from Ga'ah. We discover that God sees Gentiles as tending to behave arrogantly. Deprived of a functioning neshama conscience, they're often the sum of their flesh and bones, which would be consistent with this definition. In Gawa, we find them pridefully lifting up those who have turned their backs on and are walking away from God. Other synonyms include corpse and carcass, which bode poorly when set against the desire to live forever. Well, there is particularly bad news for Gentiles here. Recognizing that Satan is hanging out in their midst, integrated into their governments and institutions and the essence of their religions, it's about to get far worse. And this will be the last statement that we'll cover in this program. The adversary isn't lurking in the shadows. He's maneuvering behind the scenes. He's not actually hanging out waiting for the next seance. No. Come to find out, the devil has positioned himself in the forefront of man's existence. There is nothing more common among men, nor has there been from the beginning, than religion. Because you yourself said in your judgment and based upon your inclinations, from your perspective and reflecting your ambitions, I will ascend. I will rise up. I will be exalted in the spiritual realm of the heavens, over and above the stars, the most luminous and highest places and the best and the brightest of God. And I will lift up and exalt, increasing my throne, my seat of influence and power. And I will establish and inhabit a dwelling place on the mount of the eternal witness to the restoring appointments. Oh, that Dome of the Rock and Alaska Mosque, in association with the distant boundaries from the depths below and the summit above, to be concealed among that which is treasured, especially in the north. 14:13 of Isaiah. Well, this is a passage we will return to, but just some food for thought, some teasers for our next program. I don't think that Satan made a conscious decision that he would be worshipped as God, which is where this is going. I think he was programmed to be the adversary, and that his job was to lead people away. God must have them because he does not want a large number of people in Shamayim. He does not want the earth filled with antagonistic humans. He does not want to go back to the experience of the Exodus. He doesn't want the earth to be anything like what we witness today with 8 billion arrogant, cantankerous, embittered religious and political souls. No. God wants very few people to be part of his family. He says thousands, and thousands amongst billions is 1 in a million, to give you a little calibration here based upon the second statement that God etched in stone, which is explicit, saying don't be religious. Don't even think about things that are religious. Don't ever be caught in a place that is religious. No religious imagery, no religious anything. Stay away from it. It's deadly. It corrupts to the 3rd and 4th generation. And it's only thousands amongst billions who are going to receive the mercy of Yahweh by observing the conditions of the covenant. So because you said in your judgment and based upon your inclinations that you will ascend, rise up, and constantly be exalted. Does that sound like someone who is going to be lurking in a seance in the shadows? That's somebody that sounds like they're hiding in the darkness? No. That sounds like the one that is hanging on that cross in the front of the church, doesn't it? Sounds like Allahu Akbar, doesn't it? Allah is greater. Certainly what it sounds like to me. Pretty obvious, isn't it? Matter of fact, guess what word is used here? Allah is the verb. In the spiritual realm of the heavens, I want to be known as the highest among the heavens. That would mean he wants to be known as God. Then he says, over and above, and this is interesting, La Kokaba, the most luminous and the highest places. Does God not introduce the 4th day of creation by spending all of that narrative on the greater and lesser luminaries that serve as signs for the Moed, these eternal meetings of the restoring witness? And if Hasatan can rise above the greater and lesser luminary, would he not have achieved his purpose? Because then no one will know that Dode fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, Bakorim, or that Yada, his lesser luminary, his herald, is the one who is fulfilling Shabuah and Towrah, enabling the Kippurim return. And so the adversary's adversary is Dode and Yada, the greater and lesser luminaries. What God would say is the best and brightest of God. And then he says, I will lift up and exalt my throne. Does a throne that is lifted up and exalted, magnified on high as a seat of power and influence, sounds like he is hiding, that he is lurking, that the image that the religious have of Satan is accurate, or is he enthroned in the highest places, the state houses, and the temples, and the mosques, and the cathedrals, and the churches.
He's busy gilding the White House.
He is the one, yes. The White House was gilded to fit his sentiments because, well, he is there in the Oval Office because he is possessed. Trump. And I will establish and inhabit a dwelling place on the Mount of the Eternal Witness, Alaska Mosque, and the Dome of the Rock, which I will have the pleasure of destroying one day to make way for a replica of the tent of the Restoring Witness. I wanted to share these thoughts with you in recognition that this is Hasatan. This is who he really is. He is the Lord God of religion. And God has made this exceedingly clear for anyone who is informed, open-minded, and rational. So it's been a full day, a wonderful day. I thank you so much for being part of this covenant family and for your interest in all things Yahweh. May you have a wonderful evening. Good night.